I'm going live in 1 minute. Oh, it's been a long day. Welcome to Blind Vision with Joy Francis. We are continuing my favorite book, Think and Grow Rich, and it is so unbelievably amazing. I am just beyond excited and so glad that you are here with me, and we will continue reading. If you were here last week or checked it out last week, we read the chapter last week, but because I was late, we didn't get started until half an hour late, and last week was a long one. So we're going to read the chapter tonight, and then we'll talk about tonight's chapter and last week's chapter. So let me move over to YouTube, and let's get YouTube started so that we can, oh, come on, where did we go? Yes. I did start it. Where did you go? Okay. I love when that's the fun part about being blind. When you can't see things and all of a sudden I have everything ready and then it disappeared. So I'm going to go ahead and start it all over again. I just need to find where I have it at. Yes. When all else fails, search for it. It will come up in the search. There we go. Yes, you will come up there, won't you? You're going to let me copy you whether you want to or not. And I'm just going to go over into YouTube and start it all over again. Golly gee. Well, hopefully this is going to come out. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get going.
Conceit is a fog that envelops a man's real character beyond his own recognition. It weakens his native ability and strengthens all
Hopefully
his
you're seeing it and hearing it.
Chapter 9. Decision. The mastery of procrastination. The seventh step toward riches. Analysis of over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure reveals that lack of decision was near the head of the list of the 31 major causes of failure. Procrastination, the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every person must conquer. You will have an opportunity to test your capacity to reach quick and definite decisions when you finish reading this book and begin to put the principles into action. My analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing these decisions slowly. People who fail to accumulate money, without exception, have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly, and of changing these decisions quickly and often. One of Henry Ford's most outstanding qualities was his habit of reaching decisions quickly and definitely and changing them slowly. This quality was so pronounced in Mr. Ford that it gave him the reputation of being obstinate. It was this quality that prompted Mr. Ford to continue to manufacture his famous Model T, the world's ugliest car, when all of his advisors and many of the purchasers of the car were urging him to change it. Perhaps Mr. Ford delayed too long in making the change, but the other side of the story is that Mr. Ford's firmness of decision yielded a huge fortune before the change in model became necessary. Some say that Mr. Ford's definiteness of decision was just obstinacy, but even this quality is preferable to slowness in reaching decisions and quickness in changing them. Editor's comments. Henry Ford's consistency extended also to the color of the Model T, 15 million of which in 19 years of production from 1908 to 1927 were made only in black and with little change in the design. Shortly after its introduction, Napoleon Hill met with Ford to talk about the principles of success. According to Hill, in Michael Ritt's biography of Napoleon Hill, A Lifetime of Riches, Henry Ford was cold, indifferent, unenthusiastic, and spoke only when forced to, unless he was talking about his car. Early on, few people other than Carnegie could foresee the success Ford would achieve, which Hill later attributed to Ford's self-control and concentrated effort. At Hill's first meeting with him in 1911, Ford was interested only in talking about the Model T. After Ford took him for a spin around the factory, Hill bought one for $680. This is the end of the editor's comments. Making your own decisions. The majority of people who fail to accumulate the money they need are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. They permit gossip, rumors, other people's opinions, and the news reporters to do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions they are ready to tell anyone who will listen. If you are too influenced by other people's opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking, much less in that of transmuting your own desire into money. If you are influenced by the opinions of others, you will have no desire of your own. Keep your own counsel. Rely on yourself to reach your own decisions when you begin to put these principles into practice, and follow through on your decisions. Take no one into your confidence except the members of your mastermind group, and be very sure that you choose for your group only those who will be in complete sympathy and harmony with your purpose. Close friends and relatives, while not meaning to do so, often handicap one through opinions. And for some reason, even friends often seem to think that ridiculing you and your plans is funny. Thousands of men and women carry inferiority complexes with them all through life because some well-meaning but ignorant person destroyed their confidence through opinions or ridicule. You have a brain and mind of your own. Use it and reach your own decisions. If you need facts or information from others to help you reach decisions, acquire the facts or information you need quietly, without disclosing your purpose. It is characteristic of people who have a smattering of knowledge to try to give the impression that they know more than they do. Such people generally do too much talking and too little listening. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of prompt decision. Those who talk too much do little else. If you talk more than you listen, you may miss some important piece of knowledge that might have been very useful to you. By talking too much, you may also disclose your plans and purposes to people who will take great delight in defeating you because they envy you. Remember, every time you open your mouth in the presence of a person who really has knowledge, you tip your hand and show that person your exact stock of knowledge, or you tip your hand to your lack of it. The mark of genuine wisdom is modesty and silence. Keep in mind that every person is, like you, seeking the opportunity to accumulate money. If you talk about your plans too freely, you may be surprised when you learn that some other person has beat you to it by using the plans you bragged about. Let one of your first decisions be to keep a closed mouth and open ears and eyes. As a reminder to yourself, copy the following epigram in large letters and place it where you will see it daily. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it. This is the equivalent of saying that deeds and not words are what count most. The value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. The great decisions that served as the foundation of civilization were reached by assuming great risks, which often meant the chance of death. Lincoln's decision to issue his famous Proclamation of Emancipation, which gave freedom to African Americans, was rendered with full understanding that his act would turn thousands of friends and political supporters against him. When the rulers of Athens gave Socrates the choice of disclaiming his teachings or being sentenced to death, Socrates' decision to drink the cup of poison, rather than compromise in his personal belief, was a decision of courage. It turned time ahead 1,000 years and gave to people then unborn the right to freedom of thought and of speech. 56. Who risked the gallows? The greatest decision of all time, as far as any American citizen is concerned, was reached in Philadelphia on July 4, 1776, when 56 men signed their names to a document that they well knew would bring freedom to all Americans, or leave every one of the 56 hanging from a gallows. You have heard of this famous document, the Declaration of Independence. But have you taken from it the great lesson in personal achievement it so plainly taught? We all remember the date of this momentous decision, but few of us realize what courage that decision required. We remember our history as it was taught. We remember dates and the names of the men who fought. We remember Valley Forge and Yorktown. We remember George Washington and Lord Cornwallis. But we know little of the real forces behind these names, dates, and places. We know even less of that intangible power that ensured freedom long before Washington's armies reached Yorktown. It is nothing short of tragedy that the writers of history have missed entirely even the slightest reference to the irresistible power that gave birth and freedom to the nation destined to set up new standards of independence for all the peoples of the earth. I say it is a tragedy because it is the same power that must be used by every individual who overcomes the difficulties of life and forces life to pay the price asked. Let us briefly review the events that gave birth to this power. The story begins with an incident in Boston on March 5th, 1770. British soldiers were patrolling the streets, openly threatening the citizens by their presence. The colonists resented armed men marching in their midst. They began to express their resentment openly, hurling stones as well as epithets at the marching soldiers, until the commanding officer gave orders. Fix bayonets, charge. The battle was on. It resulted in the death and injury of many. The incident aroused such resentment that the Provincial Assembly, made up of prominent colonists, called a meeting for the purpose of taking definite action. Two of the members of that assembly were John Hancock and Samuel Adams. They spoke up courageously and declared that a move must be made to eject all British soldiers from Boston. Remember this: a decision in the minds of two men might properly be called the beginning of the freedom that we of the United States now enjoy. Remember, too, that the decision of these two men called for faith and courage because it was dangerous. Before the assembly adjourned, Samuel Adams was appointed to call on Hutchinson, the governor of the province, and demand the withdrawal of the British troops. The request was granted, and the troops were removed from Boston, but the incident was not closed. It had caused a situation that was destined to change the entire trend of civilization. Richard Henry Lee became an important factor in this story because he and Samuel Adams corresponded frequently, sharing freely their fears and their hopes concerning the welfare of the people of their provinces. From this practice, Adams conceived the idea that a mutual exchange of letters between the 13 colonies might help to bring about the coordination of efforts so badly needed in connection with the solution of their problems. In March of 1772, 2 years after the clash with the soldiers in Boston, Adams presented this idea to the Assembly. He made a motion that a correspondence committee be established among the colonies with definitely appointed correspondents in each colony, for the purpose of friendly cooperation for the betterment of the colonies of British America. It was the beginning of the organization of the far-flung power destined to give freedom to you and to me. A mastermind group had already been organized. It consisted of Adams, Lee, and Hancock. The Committee of Correspondence was organized. The citizens of the colonies had been waging disorganized warfare against the British soldiers through incidents similar to the Boston riot, but nothing of benefit had been accomplished. Their individual grievances had not been consolidated under one mastermind. No group of individuals had put minds, souls, and bodies together in one definite decision to settle their difficulty with the British once and for all, until Adams, Hancock, and Lee got together. Meanwhile, the British were not idle. They too were doing some planning and masterminding, and they had the advantage of having behind them money and organized soldiery. A decision that changed history. The Crown appointed Gage to supplant Hutchinson as the governor of Massachusetts. One of the new governor's first acts was to send a messenger to call on Samuel Adams for the purpose of endeavoring to stop his opposition by fear. You will best understand the spirit of what happened from this quotation of the conversation between Colonel Fenton, the messenger sent by Gage, and Adams. Colonel Fenton: I have been authorized by Governor Gage to assure you, Mr. Adams, that the governor has been empowered to confer upon you such benefits as would be satisfactory, an obvious endeavor to win Adams by promise of bribing him, upon the condition that you engage to cease in your opposition to the measures of the government. It is the governor's advice to you, sir, not to incur the further displeasure of His Majesty. Your conduct has been such as makes you liable to penalties of an act of Henry VIII, by which persons can be sent to England for trial for treason or misprision of treason at the discretion of a governor of a province. But by changing your political course, you will not only receive great personal advantages, but you will make your peace with the king. Samuel Adams had the choice of two decisions. He could cease his opposition and receive personal bribes, or he could continue and run the risk of being hanged. Clearly, the time had come when Adams was forced to reach instantly a decision that could have cost his life. Adams insisted upon Colonel Fenton's word of honor that the colonel would deliver to the governor the answer exactly as Adams would give it to him. Adams' answer: Then you may tell Governor Gage that I trust I have long since made my peace with the King of Kings. No personal consideration shall induce me to abandon the righteous cause of my country. And tell Governor Gage it is the advice of Samuel Adams to him no longer to insult the feelings of an exasperated people. When Governor Gage received Adams' caustic reply, he flew into a rage and issued a proclamation that read, I do hereby, in His Majesty's name, offer and promise His most gracious pardon to all persons who shall forthwith lay down their arms and return to the duties of peaceable subjects, excepting only from the benefit of such pardon Samuel Adams and John Hancock, whose offenses are of too flagitious a nature to admit of any other consideration but that of condign punishment. Adams and Hancock were on the spot. The threat of the irate governor forced the two men to reach another decision, equally as dangerous. They hurriedly called a secret meeting of their staunchest followers. After the meeting had been called to order, Adams locked the door, placed the key in his pocket, and informed all present that it was imperative that a Congress of the colonists be organized, and that no man should leave the room until the decision for such a Congress had been reached. Great excitement followed. Some weighed the possible consequences of such radicalism. Some expressed grave doubt as to the wisdom of so definite a decision in defiance of the Crown. Locked in that room were two men immune to fear, blind to the possibility of failure, Hancock and Adams. Through the influence of their minds, the others were induced to agree that, through the Correspondence Committee, arrangements should be made for a meeting of the First Continental Congress to be held in Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774. Remember this date. It is more important than July 4th, 1776. If there had been no decision to hold a Continental Congress, there could have been no signing of the Declaration of Independence. Before the first meeting of the new Congress, another leader in a different section of the country was deep in the throes of publishing a summary view of the rights of British America. He was Thomas Jefferson of the province of Virginia, whose relationship to Lord Dunmore, representative of the Crown in Virginia, was as strained as that of Hancock's and Adams with their governor. Shortly after his famous Summary of Rights was published, Jefferson was informed that he was subject to prosecution for high treason against His Majesty's government. Inspired by the threat, one of Jefferson's colleagues, Patrick Henry, boldly spoke his mind, concluding his remarks with a sentence that shall remain forever a classic. "If this be treason, then make the most of it." It was such men as these who, without power, without authority, without military strength, without money, sat in solemn consideration of the destiny of the colonies, beginning at the opening of the First Continental Congress and continuing at intervals for 2 years, until on June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee arose, addressed the chair, and to the startled assembly made this motion: "Gentlemen, I make the motion that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they be absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved." The most momentous decision ever placed on paper. Lee's astounding motion was discussed fervently and at such length that he began to lose patience. Finally, after days of argument, he again took the floor and declared in a clear, firm voice, "Mr. President, we have discussed this issue for days. It is the only course for us to follow. Why then, sir, do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. Let her arise, not to devastate and to conquer, but to reestablish the reign of peace and of law." Before his motion was finally voted upon, Lee was called back to Virginia because of serious family illness. But before leaving, he placed his cause in the hands of his friend, Thomas Jefferson, who promised to fight until favorable action was taken. Shortly thereafter, the president of the Congress, Hancock, appointed Jefferson as chairman of a committee to draw up a Declaration of Independence. Long and hard, the committee labored on a document that would mean, when accepted by the Congress, that every man who signed it would be signing his own death warrant should the colonies lose in the fight with Great Britain that was sure to follow. The document was drawn, and on June 28th, the original draft was read before the Congress. For several days it was discussed, altered, and made ready. On July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson stood before the assembly and fearlessly read the most momentous decision ever placed on paper. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. When Jefferson finished, the document was voted upon, accepted, and signed by the 56 men, every one staking his own life upon his decision to write his name. By that decision came into existence a nation destined to bring to mankind forever the privilege of making decisions. Analyze the events that led to the Declaration of Independence, and be convinced that this nation, which now holds a position of commanding respect and power among all nations of the world, was born of a decision created by a mastermind consisting of 56 men. Note well the fact that it was their decision that ensured the success of Washington's armies, because the spirit of that decision was in the heart of every soldier who fought with him, and served as a spiritual power which recognizes no such thing as failure. Note also with great personal benefit, that the power that gave this nation its freedom is the same power that must be used by every individual who becomes self-determining. This power is made up of the principles described in this book. It will not be difficult to detect in the story of the Declaration of Independence at least 6 of these principles: desire, decision, faith, persistence, the mastermind, and organized planning. Know what you want, and you will generally get it. Throughout this philosophy, you will find the suggestion that thought, backed by strong desire, will transmute itself into its physical equivalent. The story of the founding of America and the story of the organization of the United States Steel Corporation are perfect examples of the method by which thought makes this astounding transformation. In your search for the secret of the method, do not look for a miracle, because you will not find it. You will find only the eternal laws of nature. These laws are available to every person who has the faith and the courage to use them. They may be used to bring freedom to a nation or to accumulate riches. Those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want and generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. That is the major reason why they are leaders. The world has a habit of making room for the people whose words and actions show that they know where they are going. Indecision is a habit that usually begins when a person is young. It becomes more and more of a habit as the youth goes through grade school, high school, and even through college without definiteness of purpose. The habit of indecision goes with the student into the occupation he or she chooses. Generally, a young person just out of school seeks any job that can be found. Young people take the first job they can find because they have fallen into the habit of indecision. The vast majority of people working today are in the positions they hold because they lack the definiteness of decision to plan a definite position and the knowledge of how to choose an employer. Definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage. The 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence staked their lives on the decision to affix their signatures to that document. The person who reaches a definite decision to go after a specific job and make life pay the price he or she asks does not stake his or her life on that decision. They stake their economic freedom. Financial independence, riches, and desirable business positions are not within reach of the person who neglects or refuses to expect, plan, and demand these things. The person who desires riches in the same spirit that Samuel Adams desired freedom for the colonies is sure to accumulate wealth.
Wow. Amazing, amazing, and more amazing. We are able to make decisions without the fear of death. We do not have to worry because most of us, most of those that are listening to me right now are here in the United States, but not all of us. There are still countries that have their freedoms curtailed, withheld, and stymied. However, in the United States and many of the other independent countries around the world, we are providing the ability to make the decision, to choose what you want to do, when you want to do it, the way you want to do it, and get what you want. It is your choice. And that's the first thing you need to do is make the decision. The decision is the most important thing. If you don't make that decision, if the signers of the Declaration of Independence had not made the decision to sign their John Hancock, their name on that document, and had been willing to face death, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have the ability to do all the things that we can do. And what we have learned since then has been that we are not held down, but we have all types of things available to us. The world is open to us. It's open, it's available, and it's all there. It has been laid in front of us. And it's not, oh, you can only have this much because if you take this and there's not enough for somebody else. There's more and there's more. And as long as we keep producing, keep finding ways of making things better, doing things that expand and create extra and additional, then we are always able to come up with something else, a new way of doing. I remember, I'm not 20 years old. And so I remember living through the time when they told me, oh my goodness, the world was going to end. And when the year 2000 came, everybody was scared to death that year because computers were just going to explode and not be able to handle the change from going from 1999 to 2000. Because we had everything had been truncated down, and we had 19 and we'd gone through all the 100 digits, the 99 digits from 01 to 99. And now that 19 had to change to 20. And the world was going to come to an end. What's going to happen? Everything's going to blow up. And guess what? We have ingenious people. The mind of man is capable of doing more than what any of us could ever believe. And everything worked great. Were there problems? Always. There's always going to be a challenge here, something there, something doesn't go right. But does that mean that everything is wrong? No, never. It means that we just have one more thing we get to look at, one more challenge, one more thing we get to overcome. And by overcoming something, we get better and better and better. And that just makes us stronger and more capable and better able to create new and do more. And the more you help someone, the more you do, the more you're going to get back. Because when you give value, by giving value for something to someone, to something, it's going to come back to you. And I don't care where your beliefs are. You can believe in whatever you call. Hopefully you believe in some type of a higher supreme being, a oneness, the purpose. But I know that I did not create anything in this earth. I did not make this earth, the ground, the plants, this desk that my computer is sitting on. I didn't make the computer. But I have done things that have enabled me to buy my computer, to buy this desk, to obtain the chair that I'm sitting in, to drink the water out of my container. That will help the cough. And the ice cubes that I put in there to keep my ice cold. And someone made the machine. I can remember when I was young, we did not have a machine in the refrigerator to make the ice. We put these little metal trays into the freezer, and they had this little attack. I'm not even sure. I can't remember what the name of that is, but you would lift the handle and it would break the ice into pieces. And that was how we got our ice cubes. Now we have become, because I love my ice, other people love their ice, everybody wants to put ice in things. And so someone came up with the ingenious, gee whiz, I can create a machine that is going to make ice cubes, put them into whatever form we want to have them in, whether they be round, whether they be square, whether they be flat, whether they be chunks, they can be anything. But somebody came up with that. Somebody came up with the brilliant idea. This is a highlighter pen. I use it to highlight the book when I'm going through. Yeah, I've got my book here and I've got all the pages and everything marked, and I highlight. Well, somebody said, I can put a fluorescent color of ink in there and it's going to show up very bright. And then someone else had also came up with putting ink into a ballpoint pen. First, they were in ink wells, and you had to put the fountain pen and absorb the ink into the pen, and then were able to write with that. And then someone said, well, gee whiz, we can put this into a into a piece, a plastic piece. There we go. This one I can get to open up. And now I've got this piece that has got the ink in it, and it's got the ballpoint on the end, and it disperses the ink out of the pen. Just have to be able to make sure I get it put back together the right way, put all the pieces in there correctly. I might be able to put it back. Oh, there we go. Okay, this, well then, anyway, I'll get it to work eventually. But anyway, yeah, obviously I'm not, yeah, I took it apart and I didn't watch how I took it apart, but it just unscrewed and it was there. But that's the engineer that put that together. And that's what that engineering mind does. Someone that comes and says, okay, if I put this with this and make it do this, it's going to make it easier for somebody. Somebody created value. And all of a sudden, the world gets better. And that's what life is all about, is adding value. And in this chapter, and I don't care what your political beliefs are, you can think about it. Remember that when somebody stands up and takes a stand and says, this is what I believe, it doesn't make any difference. That's the beauty of being here in the United States. That is what this Declaration of Independence was all about. That document that they spent 2 years creating, the Continental Congress, between 1774 and 1776. They wrote that, and then those 56 men signed that. And for anyone that does not know, the reason why it is commonly said, you'll hear people say, well, sign your John Henry or your John Hancock. John Henry and John Hancock were the two biggest names that were written on there. They made them so anybody could read who they were and knew that they had signed this Declaration of Independence. They had signed a death warrant for themselves. You don't have to sign that. And that's the good part. But you do need to make the decision. You need to be able to become like a Henry Ford. And I'm from Detroit. I chuckle all the time because Ford, it's infamous. You could have a Model T in any color of black that you wanted. It was going to be black, black, or black. And that was it. And he did not change his mind. He stuck with that and stayed there. And that is what made the automobile so popular and so effective, because he had come up with creating this assembly line system that allowed multiple people to come together to put all the little pieces into this contraption that he called his Model T and become a car. The 4 horses, the 4 horsepower, and then 8 horsepower, and on and on. We have 4 cylinders and 6 cylinders and 8 cylinders. And for our vehicles, we've also got single cylinders and 2 cylinders and, all this other, but that is because we have all these beautiful minds out there that are coming up with all kinds of wonderful new things. And it's just a matter of thought. What is it that you are perceiving? What can you come up with? What have you decided? And you make your decision. And I was going back for my words because I did the decision you need to come down to faith and courage. Yes, you need the faith and courage. Oh, there was a point in here where he talks about, where Hill is talking about the pieces of desire, decision, faith, persistence, and the mastermind, along with the organized planning. Those are the pieces that they had to have to create the United States of America, to get that Declaration of Independence signed, and to get the 13 colonies to come together and create the Union that was able to stand up against the British. And we all have the ability to say thank you. And if you've ever noticed, one of the things that it was nothing that I did on purpose, but my telephone number, the last 4 digits of my telephone number are 1776. I will never let that telephone number go, because the other digits are not important, but the 1776, that means a lot for me. That means that I am identifying myself with the United States of America, because to me, that is important. I am willing to get down and kiss the ground that I walk on because of all the people that have stood up for me, that have defended this ground, for all my brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles and other relations that have died defending her or just protecting us. whatever it is. I'm grateful that I live here. I'm grateful for this. And just like I am grateful for Napoleon Hill writing all this information down, doing the research, and that Carnegie gave him the study to say, go figure it out, find out why all of these men have been able to be so successful. And yes, it was men back then. Things are changing, things will continue to change. And I am very proud to be able to say that I am a woman here, standing here in the 21st century and able to talk to you and tell you about all the wonderful things we are doing and that we have coming. And it makes no difference. I don't care whether you are a man, woman, infant, child. I don't care what your sex is. I don't care if you choose to be asexual, bisexual, transsexual, whatever. You're a person. And that person is important to me because God put you on this earth. He put you on this earth. He put me on this earth. He put all the animals. She's not here. I was just looking to see if my little assistant was sitting here with me because she usually is, but she's not here. She went out and get a drink or something. But all of these animals, all of the insects, all of the bugs and the critters and everything else that's here, God has put it here on this earth. And we are the benefactors. We get to enjoy it. And we get to do whatever we want to do, when we want to do it, the way we want to do it. And all we have to do, the first thing that we have to do is make that decision. We've got to decide that we want to do something. We have to decide what we want, what we're going to do, and then go for it. And if you don't have the ability to define that desire, what it is you want, what that decision is that you're making, you're never going to get anything. So take the time. If you're not sure, that's great. That gives you something else to think about. And thinking, it's one of the miracles. That's one of the miracles that we have. We have available to us the ability to think. These brains are unbelievable. My brain is what gave me the ability to see. I don't have the vision that you have. But my mother kept telling me, don't let people know you can't see, because if you do, they'll take advantage of you. And I believed her. I was one of those that I had a mother telling me that, and I had a father telling me that nothing I did was ever good enough. So I never believed that I had the ability to do much of anything. And then I've learned, oh, gee whiz, look back at what I have done. I had somebody challenge me I was in a workshop one day and they had us write down a list of things, they kept coming up with a time period. I can't remember exactly how it was, but we had to come up with 10 things that we had done, achievements, major things that we'd done. And when I finished and looked back at it and said, oh my goodness, look what I have done throughout my life. I have helped this world. I've made this world a better place. I've made this world a better place because I was here. Just like you are making this world a better place because you're here. And that is so critically important. It is so special. You are special. And we just need to keep allowing our brains to function, come together, create that mastermind where two or more are gathered in like mind, that mind comes together. And my belief is that the joining of that, the joining of all the minds that are coming together, that's that supreme being, that oneness, that is that God, however you wish to call. It is what it is, and it's there, and it's going to be there. And we are very lucky. We are very blessed. And I am so grateful that I was born and that I've had the opportunity to live on the face of this earth. The good days, the bad days, the ugly days, the days when I can sit here. Yesterday, the thunder and lightning outside of my window was, I thought it was coming inside the house. It was cracking that loud and that hard, but it never did, because I live in a home that's been well built and well constructed, and it protects me. And that's what we have. We have got that. We have the right to that. We don't have the right to it because it's there. We have the right to it because we give something. And when we give something, we get something back. And just because there's something there doesn't mean that we can have it. We've got to do something. We've got to give value to someone else for something that they're going to provide to us. And so, yes, we can have anything and everything, but you have to make the decision, and that's my big word. I guess that's my word for the year, is decision. We need to decide what we want, what we're going to do to get what we want. You can have anything. You just need to set your mind to it. Make that decision. Keep that in your brain. Keep that desire so fiery hot that it's just going to ignite in front of you. And kaboom, it's yours. You have it. The faith, the desire, the belief, the mastermind, the organization. Those are the pieces that need to become part of what you are doing. And you need to persist. You can be told by 1,000 people that it's not going to work. And remember that Thomas Edison said he did not fail at making a light bulb 1,000 times. He just found 1,000 ways not to make light. And the 1,001 or the 1,005 or the 1,010, that was the one that created the incandescent light. We just need to keep going. That persistence, that faith, that belief that we are doing something that is of value, that is going to be of value to someone else. And there is always going to be a way. We were told when I was a kid that we were going to run out of gasoline. We were not going to have enough gasoline. And we were going to, by this time in my life, we weren't going to be able to have cars running on the highway. Well, we still have many, many, many years of gasoline left. Yes, they're talking about it again. I'm hearing many of the same things I heard when I was younger. But what man does is man is always able to come up with something new. We create new ways of doing things. We find new ways of doing things, but we need to be careful, because just because something is new doesn't make it right. We need to make sure that we check and we look at this and we look at something else, and what is going to happen when I do this? When I push over here, is it going to be pushing back? Or is it going to give way? What is going to happen? And I love the ideas for all the alternative fuels that we are coming up with. My big concern right now, and I will just plant this seed out here. The problem that we are having is, how are we going to continue to generate the electricity to be able to charge the electric vehicles? How do we charge electric vehicles? Where does that power come from? And then when we do charge that electric vehicle, that battery that's in there, and that battery, when it dies, what do we do with that battery? Think about it. Many years ago, I worked for a garbage company. I've been on landfills. I've been around landfills. I've walked landfills. I have climbed landfills. I've been around the garbage industry. And we don't have place to put all of the spent fuel from the batteries. They have not come up with it. At least I've not heard of it. They will come up with it, but it's not there yet. And so we need to always be thinking, what can I do? And that's something that's going to be one of the big projects that somebody's going to come up with, is how we're going to get rid of the batteries. How are we going to effectively dispose of that battery? If that's a project or something that you're thinking about, that is probably one of the best things that somebody's going to come up with in the next, probably it's not even going to take 10 to 15 years, because we need to come up with it quickly. But you need to come up with all these new different things. And petroleum is part of everything. I still remember when I was in high school, seeing the movie. The movie was The Graduate, and I remember writing a paper about it. And the one big line from The Graduate was plastic. That was the future. And now, when we think about it, hey, I grab this pen, it's plastic. I grab this pen, it's plastic. I grab my cell phone, it's got plastic around. I've got it in a plastic case, and there's plastic in everything. I go, oh, I have my silly little magic wand. It's plastic. Guess what? It's all from petroleum. And even my sweater that I'm wearing has petroleum in it. The nylons that women wear, they're made from plastic, from petroleum. Not plastic, but the nylons they're made from petroleum. And so there is very little of anything that we are using right now today that doesn't have petroleum in it. So we cannot completely get rid of petroleum until we find something to replace it. So that's where all the millions are going to be made is coming up with these wonderful ideas. And that is there. There are so many brilliant people out here. You are brilliant. You have that ability to come up with some ingenious idea. And it doesn't need to be something extraordinary. It could be nothing more than, and I sit here and I'm going to reach for and just grab. I have got a little piece of paper that was sticking. It's a sticky note, the 3M sticky note. And that sticky note is there because of a mistake. They were attempting to find a glue that would seal and hold something very, very strongly. And they got this just barely holding on. And everybody thought it was worthless. And then somebody went out and took it around, and they did the marketing research and did all the things and the things that need to be done and etc. Somebody ended up coming up with, gee whiz, all these secretaries were very interested in that because they were able to have these little pieces of paper that they were using where they might grab just a little pad of paper and pull a piece off and they could stick it onto something. I've got them stuck all around my desk here so that I can remember different things that I need to be looking at. And that was a mistake. It wasn't some ingenious thing that somebody came up with. It was a mistake. Somebody was trying to make something that was going to be a very strong glue, and it ended up being a very weak glue. But they came up with another use for it. There are many things that we can do the same way, same types of things. And all you need to do is decide, what do I want? How can I come up with something? What am I thinking about? And it doesn't have to be anything extra. It can just be that basics, that little piece. And I said that we were going to go into last week's chapter. I'm actually thinking that I want to wait a little bit longer. We'll talk about it next week. It's, we're an hour into this, and I've gotten off on a tangent because I get into this country and everything that has made this country so valuable and such a wonderful place for me to live and for you to live. And we'll take a look next week at the organized planning, but that is the organized planning becomes that critical piece. Without that organization, if those 56 gentlemen had not come together and organized the 13 colonies, the United States would not be here. We would not have what we have today. And so we need to be able to get that organization together and think about it and talk about it and work with it. So let me say for now that we're going to come back next week, and next week we get into persistence. Persistence is that that reminded me, I have one of the coaches that I work with, what she tells me, she has nicknamed me the Determinator because I am determined to make things happen. And with that, my being the determinator, I just, it, I can fail 1,000 times and keep getting back up and keeping right on going. And so that's what's next week we're going to be talking about. That's what we're going to be working with next week. So I am looking forward to seeing you come back next week. Remember, as I say every week and every time you hear me talk, that if nobody has told you yet today that they loved you, let me be the first. I love you because you are you. And that is very, very special. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. And keep telling everybody about how wonderful this book is and how much you're learning and what you're getting and how much you are learning and growing and what we are going to be creating and developing and bringing forward. The new values that we're going to have and what we are going to bring forward into the world. So I will talk to you next week, and I will say goodbye for now. Good morning, good night, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are. Make it a beautiful day.